All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe, that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice we can see the Giants, the Padres, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here, at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it, if we're thinking here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much, because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here, and we will have these guys. Oh man, that's all right. It's going to get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here. Now that leg is here. Now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist, back out to the front foot, boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down. It's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw. Body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around. Giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, now that we've had the opportunity to learn the pitching delivery from the side view with those big leaguers and having the opportunity to see your own individual video, we're now going to put you guys up in groups here along with a big leaguer to get into details with you guys' deliveries here. So here's our first group. We got you guys up with Garrett Cole here. And we're going to pause this at that moment of foot strike. And again, that's that moment that our front foot gets us into the ground. And we got some weight bearing into that front leg. Like we just learned, we'll work top down here, since that's going to be one of the bigger things that we're discussing with this group here. What we just discussed with the big leaguers was at that moment of foot strike, if we, I need to get my mouse out here. At the moment of foot strike, we want to be looking at from the waist up here, first at the throwing arm, and we want to be looking at how our shoulders are staying square to the target so that our chin is looking over our shoulder at our target. That helps us keep that front shoulder in, and it helps us be able to get our throwing arm in a position that as the shoulders rotate, the arm will be able to rotate along with it smoothly. The next thing with the upper body is seeing that 90-degree bend in the elbow and the 90-degree bend in the armpit to give us that 90-90. We're looking at you guys here, and what we're going to notice is we have the 90 degrees in the elbow over here, but we have a much greater angle than that over here. And we can do kind of like that similar thing with going from back elbow to front shoulder and seeing how it's a similar flat plane. And we do that same thing then with your back elbow to your front shoulder. We have that. And then the complete opposite, we go down here and we got the elbow. Oops, that's not the straightest line. Let me redo that. We got the elbow too low and the front shoulder is kind of popping up because that glove's way up. And we know that because we've worked on that back when I last saw you 3-4 weeks ago. That was one of the biggest things we had been working on all that time. So we need to get back in the lab and working on that. And then over here, what we can see is from your shoulder to elbow is going to be in that 90 degrees. And your elbow to wrist is going to create that 90 degrees. You're just not quite there yet. Your hand hasn't flipped up yet. So if we take us back in time here, right, and we're going to notice how we have everyone's in slightly different positions, but we can maybe now see as we go forward why we're in the positions at foot strike that we are. So we'll go back to everyone's hand separation. Take that back again. And right around here is when everyone's arm should be beginning to load up because you guys are at the point in time in your stride and your body's direction down the mound that in order for it to get loaded up in time, it needs to be starting around now. So what we're going to notice is as that point in time comes where we get more horizontal, more horizontal, more horizontal, we got to find a way to get the throwing hand's rhythm and timing to flip up as this is getting into the ground. And for you over here, bud, for you to learn how to get the hand to flip up without bringing the elbow up with it. And we got, like, you already know this, and this path that we're taking here is not going to be leading us to success because of now how high this glove is finishing, leaving us in this big high angle, and then we're up to throwing uphill again, like we discussed when we first met each other a couple months ago. So we take that back one more time to watch this arm's path. Again, everyone's arm path is a little different, like you saw in the big leaguer quad box in the beginning. And what you'll notice if you watch the other group's videos, they're going to have different big leaguers than you as well. So more opportunities to watch other big leaguers too is coming. But what we're going to notice is that everyone's arm path is different, but at that point of foot strike, we're getting to that 90-90. So this group is going to be needing to do some arm path, not like aren't necessarily arm path, but like arm rhythm drills, hand separation drills, both throwing and non-throwing to help us repattern and synchronize the arms loaded up and preparedness to come through and throw. What we're going to also note here is that at that moment of foot strike, we'll work our way now to the lower half of the delivery, is the back foot, back knee, back hip, all rotating forward towards the target, successfully getting the belt buckle to drive itself to the target, and having that front leg, hip, knee, and foot get rotated towards the target to give the belt buckle the clearance to come forward. So we take this back and we just watch let's start with just your back legs, and we'll start from around the top of our leg lifts, going down to our leg descents, and just watch your back leg, and then kind of peek Garrett Cole's along the way. And now let's just notice we're all reaching the point in which the front foot's going to have to start to open up, right? We're doing a good job of keeping this front side closed. Front side is kind of leaking, open the whole time, which isn't an issue, but we just got to make sure that when it gets down, everything else was able to fire aggressively. And we're looking like we're doing exactly that. We come up to here, and one thing I'm going to note is every one of your pitches, wind up and stretch, your back foot was always in a different alignment, and most of the time it was an extreme position to third base dugout. That's going to make everything with your rotation around just a little bit more difficult, because you're going to have to do a lot more rotation to get straight to the target again, because you're not going from here to here, you're going from here to there. So it's a lot more that we got to get it going. So we're also going to just want to think about getting this foot more into that pitching rubber to begin with. We can see, again, at your point in time, you've held that front foot closed until about here. Then it's starting to open itself up. But around this point in time here, we're all getting ready for our front foot to get driven into the ground. Get driven into the ground, and into the ground. Boom, there it goes. And watch as from this point to that foot getting into the ground, watch what your arms are doing. And then take a comparison to Garrett Cole. And kind of notice what the differences are that's leading you to your position with the upper body compared to Garrett Cole's upper body. Notice how the timing of the lower body's rotation pairs or syncs up with movements in the upper body. As the back knee fires, the front glove or front arm finishes. We can see when the front arm finishes, the back arm loads, the throwing arm loads. So we can also then say when the back knee fires, the throwing arm loads. So then we go down to here, and we can say, well, why was that arm late to load? Well, we can see that the backside foot, backside knee, backside hip have not fired yet. Your belt buckle's still facing us. Whereas we can see this belt buckle over here. If we were wearing baseball pants and a belt buckle, it would be going there. Garrett Cole's belt buckle's going there, and yours is coming here. So your arm is not going to want to load up until your backside fires. So we'll see after we come out of foot strike here that your back foot will now fire. And as it's firing, now here comes your arm up. And it's just late. And when your arm is this late to the party because of how much lateness is in the backside rotation and in the front side rotation of your lower half, tremendous amount of stress gets added to the arm. So it makes now more sense why when we were talking about your delivery specifically, we were thinking about get things pulled over your back shoulder here, down and around, pull it down and around. Visually, it looked like you needed to do more of that because there's none of that occurring here. Talking about getting that hip to come around too, just because it was never coming around early enough to begin with. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at that ability to drive our trunk down through release. Again, that trunk is the upper body part here from our shoulders to our hips. This mass of our body is the trunk. We need to be able to release this ball out in front so that the ball goes downhill. So what we're going to do is as we get ourselves out of this foot strike, we're going to get the moment at which the ball comes out of your fingers, and we're going to mark where your chest is at. So the ball's coming out here, so we go from your ear down. Ball is out here from your ear down. Garrett Cole is out here. Oops. There. And then we still got to get this here to there. All right, so now we just look, and this is how much power your trunk, that chest, was able to help your arm power the throw, not just forward, but down this mound. All right, we can just see how much Garrett Cole is utilizing his entire upper body to drive this ball down and out in front of himself down the mound. Okay, so that's a big importance here as we continue to get more and more comfortable being on a mound when we're pitching. A full mound, a legit mound, is we gotta work downhill big time. We're 10 to 12 inches up, elevated on this surface here. We need to really work on getting out in front and downhill and utilizing our trunk in a manner that's out in front, thinking I got a mirror down here. I need my logo to be reflecting back at me. And then as I finish that pitch, boom, that mirror can get even flatter. And I need my image reflecting off of that mirror down here. We can see we get down there a lot here after the fact, which is great, but we didn't get to utilize a lot of that range of motion with the throw. And the big reason is because of where our arm was loaded up at. We can watch, because it was so high, so early, ready to throw in this position here, which would have been closer, it keeps kind of going up because you're starting to rotate just a little early. So now as you come through, watch how your ball is going to lay behind your head. See that? See how it's laying behind your head? And now we got to almost like cricket throw it out over front of us. Cricket throw may not be the best. Their arms they can't bend their elbows, but it's kind of a really kind of thing. And it's adding a lot of stress to that elbow of yours there, because now we got to accelerate this ball forward, but it's got to get out from around our head. So it's got to whip around this way to third base and then try to get back towards home. Whereas we can see as Garrett Cole is rotating his shoulders, that arm lays back, and it's laying back as it's going and gaining some ground. Yours goes back so much so early here that it's just a lot of stress being put on this elbow. All right. One of the things that you guys do a good job here of is keeping that head locked in at the target as you finish your throw. That's a very good and important aspect of the pitching delivery. So there's one last time for you guys to see this with Garrett Cole. All right, next group here. We got you with DeGrom. We're going to get this thing paused at our foot strike. All right, now we're going to be able to discuss some things that we just learned with the big leaguers from the side view with you guys here. The reason you guys were all paired up is for two main reasons. For you guys, we'll start on the lower half and we'll work our way up. So we look at DeGrom here and we take him back in time, and we're going to watch how aggressive this back knee is in rotating forward. We're going to watch how aggressive this back hip is in driving forward. And we're going to see how much this back foot kind of folds over itself or rotates itself forward through the big toe. All right, so let's just watch DeGrom here as we proceed. Boom, into that foot strike, into that front foot getting in the ground, and some weight, boom, being into it. And now if you guys watch your back knee, back foot, back hip, we're going to notice how much we have this back knee here already collapsing inwards. All right, that back knee is already in, where we got this back knee staying back more like this here. Right? That's going to help us be more aggressive when it is time to rotate. It's going to be harder to rotate a knee that's already kind of collapsing in, but it'll be easier to rotate a knee that's back. What we'll notice as we now go forward is we got that knee rotating forward well, but notice the difference in the back foot. See how your back foot is starting that movement, but boom, that front foot gets in the ground, and it didn't quite get the effects of really getting things going forward for you. And when this backside foot, backside knee, backside hip fire, it's going to sync up with this arm when it loads up. And because this back foot is just a little late to the party, this throwing arm is just a little late of getting itself all the way up. Boom. And then once this now foot's in the ground, it's now time to rotate around, and there's not going to be enough time really to get this arm back up any higher than it is now. So if we could imagine that, boom, you kept getting this to rotate for a little bit longer and then this front foot hit the ground, or you started this rotation sooner and went more aggressively with it, so it finished its rotation now, I bet you that would have this elbow be a little bit higher than it is right now. But this front leg is great. You're doing a really good job with this back knee, and we're doing just enough with this back foot to get that belt buckle going forward like we ultimately want. But what we're going to notice is as we take this forward just a little bit more, boom, now this is there. Right? Now that hip is really going. But we can see, like we said, after that front foot hits the ground, those shoulders are going to want to start to rotate. And now we can see how that arm is starting to come through. Come through, come through, come through. So if we are just a little bit more aggressive with this back foot doing exactly what it already does well, just sooner and more aggressively, we're going to be looking real good in the lower half. And I bet you we'll have a better alignment here, helping us have a good 90-degree angle that you already have here. Good. But we can see elbow to shoulders kind of going up, which means this elbow is just a little bit lower down here, and we don't quite have that 90 degrees. Just a little low elbow. But all in all, pretty darn good. What we see over here is same thing, but that knee collapsed in, and And when your knee collapse in, and you have that extreme across your body stride, those two things can go hand in hand. We can have a better control over the back knee. We can have better control over the direction that we go forward in. And when you have that extreme across the body throw like you do, we really got to make sure we're not late with this backside rotating forward, because now that the back foot is kind of stuck on that pitching rubber here, we're going to have a very, very tough time getting this ball released out in front to get us to go towards the target with consistency in the strike zone, because of the fact that we're late. Just like we're going to find consistency at the plate if we're late getting everything to fire when we're facing a guy with velo. So what we'll see is as you come out of foot strike, your foot turns over well, right? It wants to do the movements, but we can see it doesn't really get to go forward, right? If we just drew a line here, that heel doesn't gain any ground. It's just kind of rotating in place. And that's because it can't go forward because you already put the brakes on with the foot hitting the ground. So we need to get the backside to fire sooner and more aggressively. We need to rotate this back foot into the front foot landing in the ground. Right now, your front foot's landing in the ground, and then you're trying to rotate your back foot. The backside rotates us into our landing. We watch DeGrom. The backside rotates us into the ground, into the ground, into the ground, rotates us into the ground. You can see your back knee's trying to rotate, but your back foot can't rotate at all yet. And then we come up over here, and we can see that although your belt buckle is going to the target real well like we ultimately want, how you're achieving it is not creating all that much power, because we're kind of just taking this front leg here and we're just kind of stepping it off to the side. Kind of just like stepping it off to the side, off to the side, off to the side. If we notice, as DeGrom rotates here, his front leg is going to continue to gain ground towards the target. Boom. Boom. Really reaching out there. Not that I'm wanting you to have a big stride by any means or telling you to stride further. We can just see that this front foot kind of overly rotates. That's just kind of a sign of just kind of like opening up the front leg versus rotating it forward. What we can notice is just how like straight up and down your shin is here versus this kind of angle that we have here. You kind of have this straight down. So if we can think about kind of reaching this front leg out a little bit more and rotating it forward versus just kind of opening it up, that'll get you the extra inch or two that we need to have just a little bit better base with the front leg. And also that'll give us more time for the stride to occur in, which will give your backside more time to do its rotation in, because your backside foot wants to do exactly what we want it to do. It just doesn't have the time to complete it before that front foot hits the ground. And same thing with your back knees rotation. They both want to do it. They just can't really do it to 100% completion when they need to, because his front foot's just hitting the ground early. And the front foot's hitting the ground early because it's not striding and reaching forward. It's instead just kind of reaching or just kind of stepping off to the side. All right, so that's all of your guys' lower body observations here. So we'll let the delivery play again here for you guys to see that one more time before we discuss the upper bodies. All right, so let's go back here. And the last thing we're going to discuss here with the side view is when we get to that moment of foot strike, like we discussed with the big leaguers, is from that front shoulder to that back elbow, we draw a line, and then we look at where the hand is at, and in our elbow bend, we're looking for that 90 degrees, and then from the hip up, we're looking for that bend in the armpit to be in 90 degrees. This is the golden spot to be for arm health and to be able to be consistent with our body making the throw and not our arm having to make the throw. So if we keep that line here and here, and we go ahead and do that same thing for you guys. All right, so we can kind of see the theme for the three of you guys of why not just the lower bodies being a little late of their movements, but the upper body's positioning, why you guys were grouped together. Some are more extreme than others, right? And we already kind of talked about through yours earlier, Bud, with why we think yours is just a little tad low. And it's just a little tad. And again, it's just because this is just a little tad. We get this, I bet you we get this. Right? So for you guys, we can just see with this elbow so low, it's going to have to end up now firing up this way as you go to throw, but yet the throw's got to go down the mound this way. Right? So if we then watch as you go through, we can see how things have to go up, and now you're releasing that ball with the energy going up. Up, 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 up. And you're trying to at the last possible second. Hopefully that ball stays in your fingers long enough that it becomes forward energy. But so much of it has been up for so long, and we can't get out in front enough because we weren't loaded up where we needed to be in time to get out enough to guarantee that the ball is not just releasing out in front, but down as well. Okay, so we go back then, and over here, we can see that as you're loading up, once that foot gets down, this back shoulder is going to start to rotate around. So we can say that your arm has not loaded up yet on time. It is late to the party. Your arm is not in its 90-90 when it needs to be. And because of that, now it's going to be left behind. Your arm's going to get left behind. Your shoulders are going to start to go. And this arm's going to get dragging behind you. And also, like we just discussed up over here, it's going to be going up a lot. Up a lot. And we're trying to release this ball, like we just said, out in front of us and down. But we can see that ball is out of your hand here and out of your fingertips there, and everything this entire time has been going up, 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 up. And now you're trying to, again, hopefully that split second can hold it in your hand long enough that you can redirect it to the least forward, let alone down. It's going to be tough. Right? So now we go to DeGrom and we watch as he comes through. See how much more out in front he's getting? Bam. So we go straight line through his head, through his belt, head through his belt, head through the belt, head through the belt. And we do a line again at your guys' release of when ball's out here. So we go from ear to back of head. Ball's out here, ear to back there. Ball's out here. Oops. Ear to back head. And then we'll take that to DeGrom. Oops, there we go. Between those two frames. Go right there. All right, so then we look, and this right here is the amount that you used your upper body to power that throw down the mound. Right? And the more we can get with this angle, the more power we're going to be able to produce. Not only are we going to be able to produce more power, but the direction that we're sending that power is going to be more towards the target, which means our command is going to increase. So I'll take that back one more time so you guys can see what this looks like. All one motion again. Watching how that arm flows out of your glove up to its loading position and then down through release. All right, we got you guys here with Emmanuel Class A. We're going to pause you guys, just like the other guys, at that moment of foot strike. And the reason that you three guys were paired together is because your lower halves do a pretty darn good job doing what we're trying to get them to do. We can see we all relatively mirror Emmanuel Class A in terms of what the lower body looks like. Right, we take that back and we'll kind of go a few times through here so you can watch yourself and you can watch Class A go through these final movements into foot strike here and how you guys are doing that. Just watching the lower half right now. Watch the back, your back knees, and watch Class A's back knee and how they rotate forward. Watch that one more time. Watch your back knee. Watch Class A's back knee rotate you into your front foot landing. So now watch that back foot of Class A and your back foot of Class A and how it's turning over, rotating over that big toe to really get your back hip driving forward towards that target. All right, so all of you guys do a pretty good job of the lower half doing what we're trying to get it to do. So a lot of what we're going to be looking at here, and the reason that you three guys are paired up together, is because your three of yours upper bodies are opening early. You can see our front shoulders have already begun to rotate, which means our back shoulders have already begun to rotate, which means we have begun to throw. We do not want to begin to throw until after the moment of foot strike. After this front foot hits the ground, then we begin our throw. So we can see the D, E, T, R, and then the OIT starts to fade away because there's your front shoulder looking down, there's your eyes looking down your shoulder, your chin and your shoulder are right on top of one another. And then, boom, you start to rotate early. Your chest starts to rotate early. We go over here, and we can see, obviously, that same thing. Right here, we have that same position. If we took a snapshot of you here right now, boom, and then we get to foot strike, boom, that looks exactly like Class A's. But unfortunately, you get into the perfect position for the moment that the front foot hits the ground well before your front foot hits the ground. So because you got into the position for the upper body, that is the position we get to when it's time to throw, you're just going to start to throw. You're just going to go start throwing. You're just going to go start throwing before we even get a foot in the ground. So now as the foot is getting into the ground, you have already begun that rotation. It's only going to increase. So like we talked about in the big league quad box earlier, is we're trying to create that upper lower half separation. We're trying to separate the lower half that's rotating towards the target. We're trying to separate that from the upper half, which is fighting to stay back. And like we see with Class A, his back hip is fired forward, his back knee is fired forward, and his back foot's fired forward, which gets his belt buckle going forward. But we can see, obviously it's blurred, but we can see the entire Cleveland emblem or logo on his jersey here. That's because we go back on him, and his front shoulder is in. The front shoulder's still in, it's still in. And we can see with you guys, during this point in time, your guys' front shoulders are going out. Your front shoulders are opening early, right? And my two guys on the right side, your guys are opening early because we're getting into our 90-degree angle with our arms, our 90-degree bend with our arms very early. And now it's hard to maintain this position with your hand being above your elbow like that indefinitely. So now you're in a position that's very much representing time to throw. So now here I come to start that throw. Whereas Class A doesn't get that type of alignment with the hand above the elbow and the elbow in a 90-degree bend until like around here. Now it's getting above it. Now it's definitely above it, right? So we're just getting quick to the party with your throwing arms path to being loaded up and ready to go. We're loading up and ready to go early, which is fine, but we just got to make sure it stays there. Instead, you start to rotate. So a guy for you to watch would be like Ben Joyce would be a good guy to check out. He's got this kind of similar kind of fast to get loaded up, fast to get here, but he just holds this now. As the lower body progresses, this just holds. Even I'll just show it to you real quick because I don't know if you would know how to find it. All right, so his hand gets out early like yours. All right, yours gets out early, his gets out early. Yours keeps going, his keeps going, right? Very similar. Boom, but notice how once he gets there, boom, he's in it, you're in it. Now watch how he's able to hold in it. Boom, he's holding in it. You get to it, and then you get out of it right away. Right? And Ben Joyce now is in foot strike. Right? So he's loaded it up early, but he's holding. Just like if you were hitting in like slow pitch softball, you can load those hands early, but you got to hold them, and then bam, then you fire it. Right? Load it up, hold it, then fire it. And that should be a cue for you. So then when you throw, now it's the whole rotation propelling that throw. Instead, you get to that position, you can't hold it, you start to throw it. So now once that foot is firmly in the ground and we can begin to like throw energy forward with controlled aggression, we have just barely anything left for the throw. Boom, it's already out. So we're leaving a lot of velocity on the table. Then we come over here and we can see same thing, kind of that glove is finishing good. The glove's finishing on time. It's just taking that front shoulder with it a bit. And the reason I think that front shoulder is trying to go why this is trying to get itself going. I think it's just because this is kind of late. All right, we can see we don't need the elbow to go much higher than it is right now, but the elbow wants to continue to load without the hand going with it. If the elbow wants to keep going up, that's fine, but the hand has to be flipping up along with it. And it's hard to see because Class A's is blurry, but, right, like there's his forearm. Take it back. There's his forearm. There's his forearm. So we can kind of see the theme of as that elbow is going up, so is his hand. All right, so then there's the next one. And then there's that one. We go back to yours, and your hand is like really late to flip up. So I'm betting the front shoulder ripping this way is in hopes, in an effort to get this to flip up to be ready to start to go. So we can think either keep that shoulder in longer, which may be an impossible task to do, or it may just be think to get this hand loaded up sooner, which may be the easier adjustment to make. So we'll let that play one more time for you guys through. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention. So at foot strike here, we're going to draw this line like we did with the big leaguers. And we're going to see how much of our trunk, our upper body from our shoulders to our hips, this mass of our body here, how much can we use it to propel our throw out in front and down this mound. So we're going to take everyone to their moment of release, and we're going to mark. So ball is out here. So from your boom to boom, ball is out here. Ball is out here. I'll give you just a little bit more right there. And you got to take it back to find Class A. Somewhere between these two here. We'll just even say this one. That's a good enough example. Right, so we can just see that this is power being created by the upper body, right? Compared to at your guys' moment of release, how much of your upper body is helping you not just throw with power, but get this ball released out in front of you and being able to keep the ball in your fingers for long enough that the ball's not just being released out in front of you, but being released downward trajectory. Right? So the more that we're able to get our upper bodies driving down through release is going to result in us releasing the ball out in front of us. And that is going to help ensure that our energy is directed towards the target, which is going to help our consistency in the zone with our command. All right, we're going to be discussing the mechanics from a front view, and we're just going to concern ourselves with our path or the flow down the mound. So we already got these videos to the top of these guys' leg lifts. Obviously, every pitcher comes down the mound at different rates, different speeds. However, to make these guys flow together, I have changed up their speeds to fit. So what we're going to see is that we got Jerry Jones over here getting that front leg fully extended and really sitting into his delivery. We got Greinke, who's got his knee, which is going to be further back towards second base, than his foot is. He's really taking this front knee and kind of curling it back so that his front hip stays closed. And Kirby is going like Jones here with his front leg, but he's keeping it in a more bent position rather than kicking it straight out like Jones. But what we do notice is no matter how these guys load into their back hips, getting down into their legs, engaging their lower halves, what do we notice? We notice where the glove is going. And that's to help them be able to see over their front shoulder. They want to be looking down the barrel of their shoulder. Because the longer we can be looking here over this shoulder as we proceed down the mound, obviously we've gotten back to center, but look, we're still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that front shoulder. The longer we can do that into our moment of foot strike, bam, bam, we can see front shoulder, and our head is still trying to fight to keep that front, or rather our front shoulder is still fighting to stay above our chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. And when we do that, we can see that the back hip now has been able to come through, exposing the belt buckle to the batter, to our catcher, but preventing, because that front shoulder's fought to stay in so that we continue to look over it. Look what that's done with our chest. It's kept it squared up, squared up, squared up, as that lower half has been able to fire, and there lies our upper lower half separation that we're trying to achieve. And now here comes the most important part. Getting into this position is key for both our power production, our ability to throw the baseball with our body, thus reducing the amount of stress that's going on through our arm during that delivery, and helping ensure, this wasn't the straightest line here, helping ensure our energy continues to flow to the catcher. All right, we can see that head staying there, that head staying there. Kirby's fighting to keep it in there. And you can see he's fighting to keep it in there because it did not go more out there. So we're rotating that back shoulder. We're rotating that back shoulder forward. 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 So that way all of our power can be flung through those fingers, out through that ball, forward. If we watch that again without any interruption, into foot strike, out of foot strike. Everything staying in line with our target. And then noticing as they're getting into release, Where are those chin and chests going? To the target. To the target. The angle of our trunk, this mass from our shoulders through our waist, our trunk right now is upright. It's above our hips. In relation to the ground, it's in a 90-degree angle. As we get into release, those trunks in relation to the ground are no longer up here trying to throw the baseball. Instead, in relation to the ground, these trunks of these elite throwers of the baseball, both in terms of command, the best to ever do it, in terms of longevity and success, one of the best to do it, and an upcomer with elite velocity and potential to be an all-star. Every one of their trunks at release went from being up here at foot strike to out here at release, bringing that energy down the mound, but most importantly, towards our target. And that's something that we're able to see even easier and more clearly in the side view videos. All right, so if we kind of take this back once more and we see these arm slots, we'd say, boom. Oops, let me draw a better line than that. Right, we're at a high three-quarter, three-quarter. We are in a same thing, three-quarter, high three-quarter. Same thing here, right? So these are some of your most common arm slots are the three-quarter to high three-quarter arm slot. And then what we'll look at next here are some guys that are in that lower three-quarter tier. So we'll let, we got Luis Hill, Kyle Harrison, and Carl Crawford. All right, so the same thing, moment of that foot strike, we can see that they're still fighting to keep that front shoulder in, keep that front shoulder in, fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and then coming to release and through, we can see how those heads are fighting to stay in. Luis Hill a little bit outside, but we can see through release, bam, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. Now it's out, which is no big deal. It's already stable for long enough post-release, bam, that he could do a cartwheel over here if he wanted to after. So fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and by doing that, the shoulders have stayed squared up, and with a good lower half timing and pattern sequencing, we got the back hip to have come forward, the back hip to have come forward, exposing that belt buckle to the batter, creating that upper and lower half separation that we're trying to seek in order to achieve higher velocities and minimize the stress that's put on our arm during these high intense and continuous throws. If we then take these guys into their moment of release, we got that same concept that we did earlier, and we can see here's our low 3/4, even getting closer, some would say, to even true sidearm. We have that low 3/4, and we got that 3/4 to low 3/4. But what we can notice is all the same with those different arm slots, but the most common arm slots in our game. All these guys are fitting the same bill in their own unique ways, but these important key points are all very much getting checked off. All right, now that we've had the opportunity to learn and study from those big league examples from the front view, we now got you guys paired or grouped up here, so that way we can kind of more discuss what we're seeing in our delivery here to better understand the changes we're going to want to make. So here we are with our first group. Again, we got you guys will be synced up to the moment that that front foot gets into the ground at foot strike. All right. And what we can see maybe a little bit easier than what we did from the side view with some of our mechanical adjustments as how much these shoulders have already begun to rotate forward before that front foot gets into the ground. Maybe that's a little bit easier to see now. We can see just how extreme we're going across our body with our throw. Right? And we can see how high that hand has gotten. All right, so some things that we're doing well here is that this glove is working its way into our body how we want, but unfortunately it has no impact on that front shoulder being able to stay closed because that back shoulder has just wanted to go. We can see over here how that glove is beginning to do its swiveling at this point in time, which is good. We're looking for it to make sure now it can stay inside of us. As we now continue out of foot strike, what we're going to notice is because of this extreme across your body stride, we're going to now have to get all the way back around here to have a chance to get our energy output to be back in this way. So we'll see how you really almost identically fit that line that I drew there as you're trying to get this ball to come out in front of you. All right, so now you got this on an angle, you got this on a similar angle. Because you're rotating now around this, so you're going to be in this type of angle to do that. Whereas these guys are more here and here, so they can rotate around there while their chests stay more here as well, rotating around versus tilting and flinging. Right? If we come back over here specifically, one of the things that we can readdress that may be easier to see from this side was when we said because your hand got so high that as you began your first initial stages of your shoulders rotation, how the hand dips behind your head, right? We can see that occurring there. And now it's behind your head at the point that we'd rather have it laying back in its most extreme external position with that hand back towards second base right now. And because you're in your most extreme external rotation of your shoulder with it behind your head, that's when we add this tremendous amount of stress onto our arm to now try to fling this thing back out in front with this extreme elbow lead. And that's when a lot of tension and unneeded stress rolls up into that elbow there. So hopefully that can help you see that a little bit easier from this front view. All right, so we can kind of see how the things we discussed from the side view now look and how that affects our ability to get things going to our target with smoothness, aggressiveness, and repeatability. All right, so one more time, we'll take you guys from the top here. All right, next group here. Go the same way we have. We'll pause it at that moment that front foot hits the ground so we can kind of see the things that we discussed from the side view now from the front view here and what that looks like. So one of the things that we noted here in the center was that front shoulder opening early. We can see what that looks like. That front shoulder's closed. We're looking chin over it, but that front foot's not in the ground yet. And as that foot gets in the ground, we're starting that rotation early. Okay? Not only are we starting that rotation early, but we're starting that rotation of the shoulders before your arm is loaded up. So now you're going to be rotating as that arm is trying to load up. So watch, back shoulder is going to start to come through, hand's going to start to go up. So now by the time your hand is fully loaded up, it's already going to be coming forward. We need that bad boy loaded up, and then we rotate through. And to that point, we can come now over here. And the same thing like we talked about from your side view, we can see how that lower body has not rotated at all. If we wore a belt, if we wore a baseball belt to baseball practice, we would see it going forward. Right? We have a across our body stride here, which makes it more difficult for that belt buckle to be going. But if we had this belt tight enough and it wasn't loose here and was looped up properly, we would be able to see that the belt buckle was right here. But because of your front leg closed off, front foot closed off, keeps the front hip from opening up, and no backside foot rotation, backside knee rotation, back hip drive results in belt buckle still being over here, right? So we can really see how everything's just to the side. And because, like we said from the side view, because that back foot, back knee, back hip haven't fired yet, that's the reason that your throwing arm is not loaded up. Your elbow and your scapular muscles here are loaded and ready. It's in a great spot here, but your arm's not loaded up. So the same point we made here with Brandon, as you now go to rotate your shoulders to throw the baseball, is going to be the same time at which your hand is loading up. So boom, now your hand is in a position that it can start to come forward. Unfortunately, your shoulders have already begun to come forward, minimizing the amount of power you're going to be able to throw with. All right, and we then come over here, and we can just see something that you probably can't see, and that's the target, because your glove is in your face, right? And that's because of how late you're breaking the hands. It's okay if we're going to break the hands that late, but now we can't have a huge swoopy arm path because you don't have the time to get it back to where it needs to be by the time it needs to be there. Right? So if we're going to have this ball be in our hands all the way down to this depth here, then this bad boy has got to get itself up to here sooner. So that way it's not such a long gradual up, and now you can't control it because now it's so fast when we're getting that ha, ha, ha. It's so high. Look at this. Boom. That's an extreme opposite of yours, but I'd rather see us working and practicing down here so that way we can eventually be here, because this right here is going to continue to have influence over the angle of our shoulders at that foot strike like we talked about at the side view. And now when we go to throw, we can see everything is just spinning here. We're not going forward because we can't go forward. We got to go to the side. We just got to peel this down and fling this up. Boom. 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 Why you got to peel this down? Because it was way up here before. So now we got to peel it down. And as you peel that down, that gets flung up. And now you're releasing the ball up, up, and also going this way because of all that glove yanking this way. So your glove is your worst enemy again. So all that hard work we were putting in, we got to get back to it because it's the bad habit. Your old muscle memory has crept right back into you again. All right, so we'll play that from the top one more time for you guys here. Maybe we won't. All right, next group. We get you guys synced up so that way when your front foot hits the ground, it'll be at the same time as one another. Okay, so what we're going to see here is maybe easier than what the side view is showing in terms of our delivery. We can see with this front shoulder and this head and all this just stress and tension of just going this way, peeling, open, open, peeling, open, open, open. You can see that there versus something like in the middle here of trying to stay closed, trying to stay closed, trying to stay closed. What we're going to notice is that I think it was you that we mentioned that this back foot, if we just fired it just a little bit sooner, we'd be better off. And if I remember correctly, that is you. And we can just kind of see that here, that as we proceed a little bit further, boom, just look how much more of that belt buckle is coming through. Right? So if we can just get what your back foot already does, if we could just get it to do it a little bit sooner and a little bit more aggressively, so then we're here at foot strike, we'd be in a good position. And again, that's just trying to get a little bit more extra power out of you. Because everything else, as you rotate forward, we can see that head stays in line. You get to keep coming forward. And that ball gets to get released way out in front of you. It's exactly what we're looking for. That glove's in a fantastic position. And now you get to rotate around and finish in a nice, good position. Right? This is very, very good. Right there. Okay. We come back to over here now, and we kind of talked about from the side view is this front leg just kind of, instead of rotating forward, just kind of step into the side a little bit, right? And it's not as much to the side as I thought it was, but we can kind of see it's just, it's kind of overly rotated rather than going towards the target with slightly closed off, going towards the target with slightly closed off. You're going towards the target, but big open, right? And that's just kind of telling me that we're just kind of just setting it to the side, setting it to the side instead of driving it forward, forward. That's what I was meaning by that. All right, so you're kind of just spinning it in place instead of driving it forward some more. We can also see that that ball here is at like your chin height, which means that elbow's down here at this point. That's another thing that we talked about, is that super low elbow of yours. So now as you go to throw and we come through here, we're going to notice how that elbow is having to go up, and then you don't have any of the ability to get out in front, and that's why this arm now just kind of slings out to the side. And we're not throwing the baseball forward. You're swinging the baseball around and hoping that you can get it around enough that it will go forward. So you see it's kind of slinging around, and we're just hoping it can stay in our fingers long enough that it doesn't get sent. If we kind of do a ball tracker here, right? The ball's like back here. It's here. It's here. It's here. We're hoping the ball can stay in your fingers long enough so it doesn't keep going this way and hit righties or throw behind right-handed batters, but can stay in that hand long enough to start coming back this way. Right? And that's all because of where the arm got loaded up to at the moment in time it's time to throw. And again, that's when this front foot hits the ground. So we got to continue to work on keeping that front shoulder in and rotating things forward versus opening this up. And now we throw on that angle there, right? It's a pretty tough angle to be consistent in the strike zone with. And we can even just see it in your fingers how much on the side they are here of that baseball. Right? Because you're so far over here, your hand's getting ripped away from the baseball this way, and now we're just losing connection with the ball a little early. We see it's like, ugh, stay in my hand. So that's all because that front shoulder is just opening up early on you. So one more time for you guys to see it from top.